Belinda. Welcome to Sitting in the Hot Seat, Friday edition, 4 p.m. Got a special guest on here now. We sit in the hot seat. It's a fellow HR professional. So this is going to be great. I'm going to ask her some interview questions here on.
Hey there.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well, Belinda. How are you?
I'm doing great. Excellent. Thank you for coming on to the show.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
So let me give you a proper introduction. Breanna is the
Yes.
founder and chief learning officer of the Refining Company, an independent learning and development firm designed to support individuals and teams to understand their value through strength-based development. She is a strong HR leader. She is passionate about employees' engagement and helping others find the language to maximize their interactions with colleagues and leaders. Her background lies in implementing HR solutions to enable strong people and cultural strategies that are innovative, sustainable, and inclusive. In addition to leading the Refining Company, she leads a strategic team and implementation of learning programs for a municipal entity in Oregon. Welcome to the hot seat.
Thank you.
This is your first time on live, right?
Yeah, like officially first time on live. Absolutely.
First time. Welcome. You're already doing great. You're already doing great. Let's get started. So I got a bunch of HR questions for you. I'm gonna start you off easy.
Okay.
How would you define a good boss or a good leader?
Oh, sure. Thank you. So I believe that a good boss or leader, first of all, I think people can lead from anywhere. So I think there's a distinction between a boss and a leader. If I were looking specifically at a boss or somebody that I am reporting to, I would define that person as someone who is collaborative. So they're looking to partner with me on figuring out what the next steps are for something. They would be transparent. So whether things were financially well at the company or not, that they have no problem sharing. I also think that a good supervisor or boss is a person who will close the loop. So if I ask them a question and they're like, well, let me get back to you on that, and then I never hear back, that's a little challenging for me. So I think that a person who can circle back and say, hey, I followed up with you about this thing is really helpful. And then as far as a leader is concerned, I think that can be anybody who is confident in their ability to be able to take on the work that they're doing, that is committed to excellence and wanting to continuously call people in to be able to support the work that they're doing.
Okay. How would you define a bad leader and or bad boss?
Yeah, opposite of all of that, right?
Right.
I would say I think a bad boss is someone who takes credit for the ideas of their group, who does not, give honor where it's due for the work that's been presented. I think also a person who assumes or acts as if they know everything, so not admitting fault. Not taking the blame or the responsibility of like, hey, that was on me, I apologize, I gave you the wrong date and time. And then also someone who micromanages. I think a strong leader is someone who trusts their staff to do the work that they hired them to do, but to run up behind people every 20 minutes, are you done,
right.
It's not helpful. And the last thing that I think would constitute a bad boss or leader is someone who does not take time to intentionally learn about their employees. So they are interested only in how much work they can produce, but is unaware of the challenges or issues that their individuals are experiencing that make it so that they might be challenged to do the work. So I think a person who's just not aware of things like that can make it really, really challenging to work with and for them.
Okay. Have you ever had a good boss? And if you have, can you tell us, or a good boss or a good leader, can you tell us what made them one in your eyes?
Yeah, so I have traditionally told people that I love having the space to create. So it's just part of the thing that I enjoy is wanting to be able to be a thought partner. And when you bring me things that are half baked so that we can kind of go back and forth. And I've had some really good leaders in my past who have called me into conversations. And that means a lot to me because I think as a leader, you are not at the ground level. Brene Brown calls it horizons. You have a different outlook of things. And so I want you to come and talk to me as the person on the front line doing the work. And so I really appreciate or have appreciated working for leaders who call me into conversation. And the second thing that I really appreciate about good leaders is them speaking my name in spaces that I have yet to enter. So when they trust my skills and they're like, oh my gosh, Breanna, I was just talking about you in a meeting and I'd love for you to come present this idea. So they don't want me to just do the work and then hand it off to them for them to present, but they bring me along and say, hey, I'd love to be able to have you tell the story because you're the one that did the data or did the report for the information.
Okay. What would you define as a good coworker?
Ooh. Someone who listens to my stories and laughs at my jokes. No, I think a good coworker is someone who seeks to be a partner, someone who recognizes that we may have different roles or different functions, but understands that success comes as a group. When you're, flipping the switch and I'm pushing the button, that's how we get the thing going. And who is aware of their strengths to say, hey, you know what, Breanna, this is not my area. Can you help me? And instead of floundering and struggling, we'll look for other people to be able to help them do the work. A person, I think, also who I think a good coworker is also someone who honors their own boundaries. So they're a person who will say, I don't have the capacity for this right now, or I can do this, but my timeline's going to be next week, not tomorrow. So they're a good communicator in how it is that they can help me, how it is that I can help them. And again, back to the part about not being afraid to admit mistake or fault. That they will just say, hey, I'm sorry, I couldn't get it done, or I need some more time, I think is really, really important.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask you, so those are my little warm-up questions. Because you're in HR, that was warm-up. Because you're in HR, I'm going to ask you some even more questions. When interviewing, why is it important that the interviewer is asking interview questions? Why is that important? Why do we ask questions?
I think we ask questions because there's so much to be desired from a piece of paper. Like I might have gotten your application and I could say, yeah, I think, but those are all assumptions that we're making based on the words that maybe you wrote and maybe you didn't. If you had somebody else who, pinned your resume, which is definitely a great service. And I help people do that sometimes too. But asking questions really helps us to tease out like the intricacies of your work. Your resume is more just like a, kind of a chronological or maybe a functional tale of like, these are the main things that I did, but it doesn't talk about the process. So walk me through your thought process, your critical thinking around, well, why did you make this decision versus this decision? So questions really help us to tease out how it is that you might perform in our spaces with the work that you've, previously come with.
Okay. You have two candidates and they're relatively equal. Both have an education experience that are relatively equal. What can they do that stands out for you to say, hey, I'm gonna pick you over this person?
Yeah. Oh gosh, I love this question. So Simon Sinek, great, business person and thought leader, that I think many of us in learning and development refer to, talks about the golden circle, in which he says that inspired leaders and inspired organizations start with their why. They communicate from the inside out, their why, the how, and then the what. What happens in interviews is that we often start from outside in. We talk about like what we do. I've been in this role and the how is like how I do this job, but they leave out the why of like, I'm passionate about this work because of this. So I would say that a candidate, if I've got two candidates that, all things considered equal, I'm listening for the person who is going to say, I believe this work is important because when I am at this customer service counter, I see every person as an individual and I believe that they all deserve, the best experience ever possible, right? Like,
Right.
so it's that why piece that really sets candidates apart for me. And it helps me to say, oh yeah, I could hear that you would be a great person to work within or add, not be a culture, fit, but a culture add to the place that we, have, you coming into.
Excellent. So you have a candidate. So a lot of times, people will say, I want to, what question should I ask? Should I ask about what the pay? What is one question that you think people should ask at an interview that's not related to pay or benefits? What's one question?
Yeah. Yeah. So I am always really keen to know, what does success look like in the first 30, 60, 90 days and 6 months of this opportunity? Because what that does is that helps me to understand how it is that I should be starting to frame my mind of like, oh, well, they want me to build an entire learning and development program. Oh, but they don't want that for 8 months. Okay, great. I've got some time to work on some of these other like little or tic-tac things. I think oftentimes we leave an interview saying, oh, this is so great. Like, I want to do this job, but that other duties as assigned part usually comes in the first, little bit. It's like, we're not going to ask you to do all these really big things right out the gate. We need you to learn our organization. So when you can start to identify the timeline of what it is that you're expecting of me in these first like few months that I'm here, can really start to help you to settle into like, oh yeah, I know that I can accomplish those things because I'm looking at little incremental, accomplishments instead of I need to go from no program to 2,000 employees having, something next week. Like, that's
Right.
too much. But tomorrow you want me to start new hire and orientation? Great. I can do that.
Okay. Excellent. So here's a good, what is a pet peeve of yours from an interviewer? What's a pet peeve from an interviewee? What's a pet peeve of yours?
Okay. So this is like, I hope people don't do this anymore, but maybe they still do. Is the tell when an interviewer asks, tell me about a time you took responsibility for a failure, or they say, tell me about something that's a weakness of yours, and the response is, well, I just work too hard. I just work too hard. Gosh, I wish I could slow down sometimes. It's like, first of all, stop. Like, that's not real. What I'm looking for as an interviewer is for you to honestly critique yourself and say, this is where I struggle, and these are my guardrails, or this is what I do to compensate for that. And so I'm a Gallup-certified Strengths coach. So we're talking about these 34, strengths and talents that we all have. They're just in a different order.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they say about the bottom strengths is that they're not weaknesses. They're just things that you don't do as naturally. And so it's almost like roller skating in mud. It's like, why would you do that? You could probably make it somewhere, but not very far. There are other things that you do just naturally well. Mm-hmm. And so I'm looking to hear from an interviewee that it's like, you know what? I'm not as organized as I would like to be. And so what I do is, instead of making checklists, I use Post-its, and there's one idea per Post-it. When I finish the task, I throw the Post-it away. It's probably not as clean and as beautiful as other people's notebooks, but it helps me to like stay organized, because if I don't do that, then I'm going to forget and we're going to have a different conversation. Like, I'd rather have you be that honest with me than tell me that you work too hard, because I'm instantly like, oh, I'm going to kind of move you down to the list to hear somebody who's going to be more honest with me instead. What
is something on a resume that is a turn off for you?
A picture? Oh, no, I hope people don't do that. I hope they don't do that anymore. I don't know if I would say that there's too much of a turn off, so much as I want to see that you have catered your resume to this role. And so there are things that you do in your job that are like, yeah, I work at the customer service counter, or I work in, in HR or whatever, but there are things that you probably didn't put on there that I probably really need to see. And so it's about kind of changing your resume a little bit. And I know it's time consuming, but if you really want the job, you're going to do the things, right? So I can't say that there's so much of a turn off, other than like funky fonts and colors. Like we want to think about accessibility. So like you don't know who's interviewing you. The fact that I don't have glasses on right now, I can barely see you. But the glare from my ring light is too much. But it's the idea of like, how do I make this information as accessible as possible, not using size 9 font because you want to get everything on one page. Like you're 50, you're 60, you have experience, go ahead and put it on there. But yeah, as long as it's accessible, I think that whatever you have is probably fine.
Excellent. So do you, when you're calling a candidate, you see a candidate, oh, I want to call this person in. So always be like, your resume gets you an interview, your interview skills land you the job. When you go to contact that candidate and their voicemail is full, or you can't leave a message, their voicemail is not set up, what do you do?
I'm done. Like I honestly, Belinda, I do not wear track shoes to work. I'm not going to chase you. You are a professional seeking to gain employment at my organization. I like you, but I'm not pressed. And I just want to be very clear about that. And that might sound kind of rude, but it is important that, you know, I understand, like, I'll use the housing market, for example. Like, you know, there's a lot of, you know, there's not a lot of inventory. Like the supply is low, so the demand is high. So like sellers can do kind of whatever they want.
Right.
I'm not in the housing market. Okay. Like I know there are people who want jobs. And so I will go find someone else. It speaks to me as less than professional and less than prepared when you have sent out a resume and you're interested in, like, likely to get somebody to call you back, but your resume, your phone mailbox is full, or you don't have a voicemail set up. What am I supposed to do? So I might send an email. If I really like you, I might send an email to follow up because I think that's professional, but I'm not pressed to reach out too far. Just being honest.
Right. No, I agree. when you send the email, because I mean we're speaking the same language, so we're here. When you send the email, how long do you wait for a reply?
If it's a hard to fill position in that I really actually do not have a lot of qualified candidates,
right,
I would say like 48 to 72 hours. So like 2 to 3 business days. What I will do though, usually is that I will send out, like I'll have like a short list of like, I basically do all my calls at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, I've already like looked through, I know who I want to call, and I'll call all of those people. And then I will have a list for myself of like, when did these people get back to me? When did I first reach out? When did I get back? And I have somewhat of like my order of them responding. I don't make multiple offers though at one time, right? So it's just like, you know, but I might entertain like, hey, whoever, first come, first serve for this interview slot. But, you know, and then when that person finally gets back to me, it's like, hey, all I have left is 2:30. Like, so can we make that work? And if they say no, then it's like, okay, well, let's try. Because I do want to be mindful that all people looking for employment are not unemployed. And so I do want to offer some daytimes and some maybe later in the evening times if possible. But yeah, it's only like 48 to 72 hours that I will just kind of say, okay, great. Well, I'll just put that in the other pile and I'll move on with my other candidates.
Right. Do you yourself, when you're looking at the resumes, how long do you look at each resume? Like how long do you look when you look at somebody's resume, when you're looking for the basic qualifications, how long do you look, and how hard do you search on the resume for the qualifications?
So usually what I do is that I will meet with, say I'm trying to fill a requisition for your position. You are my manager that I'm looking for that for. I will do like a meeting with you for like, 30, 40 minutes to find out, like, I see what you wrote for the job description, but like, tell me what you really need. Like, do you really need someone who is like a genius with Excel, or will you train them up on that, whatever? So I really get like the backstory of like what your needs are. And then once I have like my short checklist, I will probably scan a resume for like, maybe I think I'm a little bit more generous than others, probably like 2 to 3 minutes, just to be able to say like, let me make sure, because part of my thing is also to like, through the refining company, which is my business, is that it's really about unearthing like the potential. And so I am really kind in that I look through and say, well, maybe well, maybe we could see about it. But I don't dig, if I have a lot of candidates, I don't dig too deep. I'm looking for people who were clearly able to, pull the words from the job description or have some very clear skills that I think are transferable. Especially if they have a cover letter, that almost saves me even more time in the resume because they told me the story a little bit already. And I'm like, oh yeah, cool. Let me put you in my short list and then go back with my short list and do a little bit deeper of a dive.
So you like cover. I don't care for cover letters, but you like cover letters. Tell people, and I always tell people it's no right or wrong, but why do you like cover letters? Why is cover letters important for you?
Yeah, so I like cover letters because going back to your first question or your earlier question about like why do we, look at or why do we ask interview questions, is that for me a cover letter is your opportunity to just share a little bit more about yourself. Like your resume is going to say, these are the things that I've done, but it's not necessarily going to have that philosophy, that why for you about why it is that you're interested or why this is important. And so I like to see a cover letter to be able to say, well, why did you think that you can go from, working in higher education to working in the bubble factory? Like, what is it? Well, it's like, well, kids love bubbles and there's kids at the university. Like, whatever it is that you're trying to help me to understand. I love seeing cover letters to understand, like, I know this about your mission and this is what I believe for myself. Here's a quick overview, couple details about the current job that I'm doing or the work that I love. Please give me a call. So I do enjoy them.
You're like, okay. So this is great because, it's like we can speak HR language. Yeah. Why do you think people don't or are afraid of HR? That was one of my biggest things is like, I can call to say, hey, your medical card came and they're all, why do people don't like HR, do you think?
Because I think that people believe that HR is simply just hiring and firing. And they do not realize that there are like 16 areas of HR. Holler back at Sherm certified. Right. But you know what I mean? But there are so many levels and layers. Like, so it's funny because in my old job, we had it's kind of like a updated office. So we had cube farms. We didn't have individual cubicles, but you had like these like boxes of 4. So there's a person in each of these areas. And I shared a cube farm with the employee labor relations people. And we used to laugh because we're like, oh, I work in HR. I was like, but not that HR. Like, that's them over there. Right. And so I think people not even really knowing the term employee labor relations, think of discipline, think of problems, think of challenges when they think of HR. And so if you're calling from HR, it's like, ooh, did I send that email to everybody? Like, what did I do? If that panic kind of washes over, but not realizing that there's talent acquisition. Hey, you know what? There's this role that just came available. We think you're perfect. Right. There's a new training that's come up. We think that you'd be a great candidate. You've been nominated for this award. We've got new benefits that are here for you. And so I really think that that's where that fear comes from, of people just not knowing enough about HR to understand there's so many different areas that can really help employees versus just, put a stop to the work that they're doing or their employment.
Okay. I'm going to ask you one last question. And I think a lot of people need to hear this. You have a position that you've posted and you're hiring for one person and you get 100 resumes. At what point do you stop? Do you look at all 100 resumes? No. Or at what point do you stop?
So, what's interesting is that, so when I used to do a lot of recruiting for the organization that I just left, which was a multi-billion-dollar healthcare organization, we only looked at the first 20 applications. And if we could not find who we wanted in the first 20, then we would move on to like the second 10 and then another 10. This is why I would say that it is so important for you to like stay ready so you don't have to get ready. So like keep that resume up to date. Have the multiple versions that are going to help you to say, if I do something in, learning and development, I need to highlight these skills. If I'm doing something that's in benefits, I need to highlight these skills, because when those job positions are posted, you are likely already competing against so many people that taking the, well, I'm gonna think about it overnight. Like, pull your application if you don't want it, or say no thank you if they call you. But waiting until you're ready will keep you in the same role that you're in, or keep you unemployed. It is incredibly important to be ready enough to just send out the resume, and then most systems will allow you to continue updating the information as you're in it. But I just think it's incredibly important to recognize that most recruiters, most organizations and their systems are only looking at the first 20 to maybe 30 if it's a small company or a small or a requisition where they don't have a lot of people. So yeah.
Show Breanna some love on here. She made it through the hot seat. She did an awesome job. I hope everybody got something from this. I've said it now. You've heard yet another HR professional say it about what you should do for resumes. Her opinion on cover letters. Everything. Show her some love. Thank you for coming on. Tell them what you do and how they can get in contact with you.
Yeah, so my 9 to 5 is that I'm the Learning and Development Program Manager for Washington County in Oregon. So I'm the first person to hold that role. So I'm responsible for building the strategic vision of learning and development within the county. So really big emphasis on psychological safety and career advancement, especially for people of color. My 5 to 9 that I think is really, really important is that I am the founder and the chief learning officer for the Refining Company. And so basically what I do is I work with individuals and teams to be able to unearth their office confidence. And office confidence is really this idea about showing up at work unapologetically yourself and maximizing your interactions with your colleagues and leaders. So I walk people through the Clifton Strengths Assessment, do some private coaching to be able to help them just feel more confident in their current role, because people deserve to bloom where they're planted, or if they want to go a little bit higher, they need the skills and the confidence to do so, and I help them do that. So that's my 5 to 9 that hopefully one day will be my 9 to 5.
How can they contact you?
Yes, absolutely. So please reach out to me on Instagram. So you can find me at at the refining_company. You can reach me through my website, www.therefiningco.com. And if you're on LinkedIn, I do have a page there. Just search The Refining Company, and then I will come up. So I do a Mindset Monday mantra every Monday. So would love to give you and your listeners, your audience, just those tips and those nuggets and those challenges every week to be able to make sure that they're practicing developing office confidence, because we need it to be able to ensure that we have the career well-being that we really deserve. So that's me.
If you're following me, you need to be following her. Go follow her right now on her Instagram, all Instagram, LinkedIn. Go to her website. Thank you so much. This was excellent. It was a lot of fun. I hope we can do this again. Yes, you just let me know. Now that I feel comfortable doing a live, I'm going to add that to my imaginary social resume, that I know how to do it. So you call me in and I will be here for you every time, Belinda. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on.